We have no speakers.
With that, thank Caltrans for their hard work. And I know Highway 1 construction brings a lot of headaches and complaints, but done it well. A lot of good job and a lot of hard work at night, so that helps. So thank you. With that, I'm going to close that up and move on to 26, which is Highway 1 State Park to Bay-Porter Auxiliary Lanes and Bus and Shoulder Project Amendment to the Construction Cooperative Agreement with Caltrans.
Good morning, Chair Montesino and Commissioners. Amin Abu Amara, the Director of Capital Projects at the RTC. Over the last few years, the RTC probably have been delivering on the Highway 1 corridor improvements, bus and shoulder, auxiliary lanes, and we're almost done with segment 1 from the Soquel Drive to 41st Avenue, 41st Street. And we are in the middle of construction for segment 2 from Bay-Porter to State Park Drive. And we have the great partnership really of all involved, the great partnership of the public, the great partnership of our state highway, Caltrans. They are administering, have been administering the segment 1 and segment 2. And we have the great partnership as well of the county and the cities around us. So the construction projects are really take a toll on everybody involved as well. As Director Eid segued to what he was saying, basically there is a lot of complaints that come. We, along with our designers and the construction team, we try and manage complaints. We try and manage traffic. We do that with the utmost attention to safety, first of all, and of course, timeline and budget. However, in construction projects, it's there's a lot of sometimes unforeseen situations, a lot of infield conflicts that come along in the construction, and you probably wouldn't have any chance to, as much as you do with great designers we have and all that, there's sometimes these conflicts happen. And what we are in front of you now is also another request for additional contingency funds for segment 2 because of some situations that we have faced in segment 2 starting back in April of 2024, and we're almost at halfway. Successfully managed to, with the help of Caltrans and our designers, successfully managed to get it to this stage, almost 50% done. We're almost going to be done in the fall of 2026. That's the schedule. And along with that, we have identified many hurdles, and we have come across them and solved them. For that, I have our Caltrans partners, Tim Lang, he's the Chief of Construction for the Northern Caltrans District 5, as well as Madeline Jacobson. She's our project manager, and they are gladly here to present to you the update for segment 2. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Madeline Jacobson, the Caltrans project manager for the Highway 1 bus on shoulder projects, spanning the full limits of the corridor. But this morning, we're speaking with you about the segment between Bay-Porter and State Park Drive. And presenting alongside me,
Tim Lang.
Thanks, Tim. So we have you can go to the next slide. A brief presentation this morning that includes sharing some construction progress updates, along with a summary of some of the key project challenges, risks, savings, and the construction capital funding needs before you. Next slide. So as Amin mentioned, to date, construction progress on this segment is about 45% complete. We've finished completion of Stage 1A, which is described for you on the slide. And the Capitola Bridge is about 90% complete. Additionally, I'm sure you've seen many of the sound walls and retaining walls that have been completed along the corridor, as well as an overhead sign foundation. So I have a couple pictures on the next few slides just to demonstrate. This is the Capitola Bridge. You can see the old structure in 2023 and the new structure as of August 2025. This is featuring a retaining wall constructed along the corridor, just a visual reference of the progress. And then here's a sound wall that's been underway. So Tim is going to cover the bulk of this, but the crux of what we're presenting with you this morning is the financial needs of the project. And so we've divided it into these 5 critical categories of what's been going on the corridor. And so this slide gives you a summary, but I'm really just going to turn it to Tim to provide the overview of each of these items.
Okay, so digging into the details here, the first of the categories is the revision of stage construction 1A. Initially, the contract 1A calls for the complete closure of the entire Bay-Porter Avenue interchange, which includes all 4 ramps. When the contractor put their work plan together, they opted to close them all at one time for an extended period of time. Looking at that work plan, we decided it wasn't a viable option due to significant public impacts. At that point, the stage construction had to be revised, so backing up, changing the staging, and allowing for the ramps to be constructed piecemeal, essentially, rather than all at one time. Next slide. Next challenge, the modification of the Mar Vista pedestrian overcrossing alignment. Again, during construction, it was identified that there are 2 existing force main sewer lines belonging to the county that were not shown on the drawings. So assessing that, the sewer lines were in conflict with the POC foundation. Looking at options to mitigate, one would be relocating the sewer line rather than trying to modify the structure. It was determined that would be more expensive than modification to the structure. So we went back, reevaluated, and found the best alternative to be relocating the bridge away from the sewer line. Couple of key points there: it's less expensive and allows the POC to be constructed this year to avoid more than a year delay to the project. In addition, 25 of the 45 plan sheets were affected by the change. Next slide. Another significant issue is has to do with the construction of the retaining walls. Prior to building the walls, tree removal is required. What we identified during construction is that the number of trees required to do the work was underestimated. So what we have is about 5,000 feet of retaining wall to build, and significant, and that's throughout the project. So with that, additional trees throughout that length. In addition, there were environmental hurdles to get through in adding additional trees, which equated in working with agencies to get that concurrence. However, it did delay the project a bit, and obviously additional cost for the delays and the additional work. Next slide. Another category is differing site condition. Like you've heard from Amin, some things are unforeseen, and we don't necessarily get into those until construction begins. A few subcategories here. Existing materials unsuitable for use as anticipated. That includes soil conditions in the median and widening and other locations. Another subcategory, man-made buried objects. As you see in that middle picture there, we have issues with the existing structural section of the highway, which doesn't match what was on the plans. In that case there, what the plan showed was approximately 6 inches, or half a foot, and this is showing approximately 1.5 feet. And then another issue, like you've already heard in the presentation, utility conflicts. We try our best, designers do the legwork ahead of time, but sometimes utilities just aren't caught, or at least the conflicts, and they arise during construction, and we handle them as changes. Oop, back one. I think you're ahead of me. All right. Another significant cost and challenge to the project is maintaining public safety. Obviously, congested corridor, large volume of traffic, squeezed down now within the work zone. What happens as a result is the safety feature, the temporary safety features that we use to keep everyone safe do tend to get hit, and we have to maintain those throughout the life of the project. And again, with additional delays, that is an extra cost. Next slide. And then looking ahead to finishing out the project, we've at this point have a list of current risks that we're monitoring here, looking ahead. Something that has arisen, and even really recently since the agenda topic was submitted, we've identified that top item there, an existing change order for a retaining wall that was identified in the field that wasn't shown on the plans, which is in direct conflict with some new walls that need to be built. Then stage 1B construction. So that's a stage coming up. We are planning as a risk to account for unforeseen change orders, unsuitable materials. Obviously, we don't have clear numbers, but it is a risk we are evaluating as we move forward. Then we have finalizing the design modifications for the POC. While we do have a clear strategy of moving forward, we don't have the complete redesign to be able to have a final dollar amount to assess that. So again, a risk that we're keeping in mind, considering while we move forward here. And then just the overall project financial health, contingency needs. All these changes require a need for contingency. So that's constantly in the forefront, as we've seen before, monitoring that. So we're proactively staying ahead of it. Next slide. Okay, some good news. Throughout the work so far, again, almost halfway done with the project, we have been able to find some savings along the way. Here's a few examples of what we have and some values put to that. I can just do a quick overview of each one. Let's see, big one at the top there, reclassifying some material originally identified as aerially deposited lead, contaminated soil. With the information provided in the contract, it was anticipated that would have to be taken off-site to a disposal facility. And we since did some additional testing and found that we're able to utilize either some of that material on site or dispose of it at a location that wasn't a hazardous waste facility. Basically, it was unregulated material, just like the soil that we're using elsewhere on the project. Then southbound Bay-Porter on-ramp changes. This was a close look at the design of the ramp and identifying, number one, actually found some good information in assessing the conditions of the existing ramp. It was in a condition that was better than anticipated, and we were able to do a little bit of redesign there, adjusting the profile of the ramp and reduce the scope of the work needed to accomplish the final design. And then a few smaller miscellaneous examples of design changes. Looking at irrigation, we were able to reduce some of that scope, yet still accomplish what the systems are supposed to, how they're supposed to perform, along with smoothness and pavement issues based on final conditions, again, as we move forward. And then design changes for overhead sign panels, again, looking ahead to see what we could change in the design to save a little bit of money there. Next slide. And this is the summary of additional work due to change orders. So now this is what we've got in the forefront of as a status at the moment of changes to the original contract and looking ahead to some funding needs. In this case, it'd take a lot of detail to dig into each one of these. There is a comprehensive list available, but what we wanted to highlight is the magnitude then. So adding up the design changes to date and with some other figures coming up here, this totals 7.7 at the moment. So that's additional costs to the original work. If you go to the next slide, we have a nice summary here incorporating that number 7.7 million of a total additional work. So if we take that, we would be looking at adding 10% of the remaining $44 million of work to complete the project. And then two credits of one is the project cost savings. We identified a couple slides back, 1.5 million, and then the original 4.1 million project contingency. So the total of those figures being 6.5 million. Next slide. So then moving on to highlighting some of the successes that we have had along the way here and look forward to continuing. Stakeholders partnering, a very core part of Caltrans construction process, inviting stakeholders, including RTC, their designer, the contractor, as well as the county. Maintaining safe, productive job site, no significant safety issues, proactively addressing as they come up, and creatively implementing alternative solutions, saving the 1.5 million we highlighted earlier. We've also really had a good partner in Granite Construction with their commitment to be flexible with these changes that we've been working through along the way, and they've been able to mitigate a lot of challenges that could have been a lot worse. So really appreciate their participation. And then diligently progressing construction to complete the Capitol Avenue Bridge late this fall. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you for that detailed report. I think you answered one of my questions is the bridge anticipation. And would that be open to the public? Not like the pedestrian bridge sat there for months and hopefully it can be used sooner once it gets finished?
Yes, that's the plan.
Thank you. Commissioner, questions? Commissioner Clark?
Well, good morning, and thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the information. One thing I want to note is that I really appreciate the increased detail on this report, and it's something that we'd asked for as a result of the last one. So I appreciate the detail you put in there. I also really appreciate the active work to find those cost savings. However, we've got cost runs, which, give me a great deal of heartburn. So I just want to ask some questions about them. First of all, one of our additional cost items here was sort of, I guess, a misscheduling of how the off-ramps and on-ramps were going to be closed, right? So it caused us to have to rethink that. It seems a little bit like a no-brainer that closing all the off-ramps was going to create a significant issue for the public here. And so now we've refigured this, and it's going to cost us additional money. My question is whose plan was it to close all of those? It seems a little bit like an own goal on us, if you're familiar with that soccer term, right?
Yeah, so in that case, that was part of the design process and possibly in oversight. In coming to construction, the contract then allowed for the contractor to choose that as a work plan. And at that point, they took advantage of that. Obviously, that's going to get them the work accomplished as soon as possible for them and most efficiently. And that's where we've then found the conflict.
All right. It seems to me, and I totally understand the cost overrun behind the unmapped sewer force main, right? Absolutely. That's what contingencies, in my mind, that's what a contingency is for, a situation like that. Situations that we have control of, such as looking at this and going, oh my gosh, we probably shouldn't do that. For me, that's not what contingency money should be for. We should be figuring this out. We should be giving an actual cost estimate of what this thing's going to cost based on smarter decisions like that. And I understand if that wasn't your choice, but that's kind of where I'm going with this, and that's what frustrates me about cost overruns. I have no problem with moving the pedestrian overcrossing foundation. That was something well beyond your control, and you're mitigating it appropriately. But I also want to take a look at some of these cost savings that we found. So one of them was the removal of a couple of sections of sound wall, right? And that's going to save us some money. So for me, that begs the question of, if these sections of sound wall are unnecessary, why were they included in the first place? And are they really unnecessary? And then are there other elements of this that really aren't necessary, and we can find additional cost savings now?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's another issue that was during the design process, and maybe we have some others that can speak to that. Me being involved in the construction process, I don't necessarily know the entire background of how that plan was developed. But
Yeah, and if that's not a fair question for you, I'm fine for, whoever's eager to answer that one. And I understand there's design and there's construction side of it. And so that one, that's a jump ball up for anybody who wants to answer that and how we got to there.
I'll take that one, Commissioner. So as you may or may not know, I've been, prior to being the executive director, I was the project manager for this project during the design process. For the ramp issue, what was envisioned was not all, the entire interchange all closing at the same time. We knew that these closures were going to be needed in order to construct the work. But unfortunately, sometimes the interpretation of a contract can get a little bit fuzzy, if you will. And the contractor was originally proposing to close the entire interchange for 14 months, which we intervened and said absolutely not. So I suppose the cost increase associated with maintaining traffic and limiting the impacts of the traveling public is somewhat of a price to pay to limit the impacts of the traveling public. I mean, I think I might have lost my job if I closed the entire interchange, one of the busiest interchanges in the county, for 14 months. I probably wouldn't be here. So, these things happen during construction. And then as the sound wall is, your concerns about the sound wall, sometimes there's differing conditions during construction. And in terms of the original alignment of the sound wall, we worked extensively with the condo complex that sound wall is intended to serve, really. And this was the alignment that we landed on. And then as we went into, actual construction and having to get big equipment up very steep slopes, it was very clear that we had to update that design. So we actually went back to the condo complex, presented to them, made this adjustment. We actually saved a bunch of trees that we were originally going to be needing to remove, which the residents were really happy about. So this, as far as the sound wall goes, those types of things happen also during construction that, contingency is intended to cover. But in this project, in this case, there's quite a bit of complexities, and then the sewer line was a big deal. And here we are today. So there's a little bit of history there. I know it's not all rosy, but
Well, that helps to at least explain it. It helps us to at least understand that. And I have just a couple other questions on some of these. On taking a look at these adjustments on it's page 2616, there's a cost savings for smoothness adjustment. Can you explain that to me? I read that and I see, okay, are we sacrificing the smoothness of the highway to save some money, or what does it really mean?
in essence, the concept is exactly how you explained it, but it's relative to Caltrans standards.
Okay.
So our specification requires a contractor to build the final roadway surface to a particular smoothness. But there is some flexibility there to where if they do better than the expectation, they get a bonus. If they do a little bit less than the expectation, we get a credit. But in either case, it's all what Caltrans has deemed acceptable.
So we don't feel like we're riding the giant
No,
tipper.
you won't feel it. The smoothness standards are so stringent now, nobody would be able to tell.
Right. And I'm taking a look at other items listed here on the change order description. There's a charge for $20,000 for man-made objects. And then below that, there's another line for remove buried man-made objects for $30,000. So did it cost us $20,000 for you to find it and then $30,000 for you to remove that? Or can you explain that a little bit more? That's on page 26-18, Exhibit A, on the change order descriptions.
I don't think I have that one with me here. Yeah, let me take a look at it. Which numbers here?
It's on page 26-18A. It's on Exhibit A, the change order description. There's a line there for buried man-made objects at a cost of $20,000. And then just below that, there's remove buried man-made object for $30,000.
I can take that back. I can back up.
Okay.
I can take this.
So being in the details here, I'm not in the trenches every day. We do have Martin Nam is our construction engineer on site who can provide a little bit of insight for us.
Good morning, Commissioners. As you said, my name is Martin Nam. Sometimes the title can be a little bit deceiving. What happens is we go in, we dig, we find man-made buried objects. Sometimes we call it, buried man-made objects. Sometimes, but the fact of the matter is this is unforeseen condition. So the title might be a little bit deceiving. It's not like we find it, then we try to remove it.
And looking at it now, I see a little bit more clearly what this is. If you look at the number,
Correct.
it starts with 4. That was the original change order.
Okay.
Or S1 is a supplement to that change order, which means it's within the same scope. So basically, it means additional work to that original work.
To the same object?
No, well,
Right.
or other objects in the same.
Got it.
Yes, you got it.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's just nomenclature there.
And then just a couple more questions. Thank you for my fellow commissioners indulging me here. These cost overruns, there was a situation that was highlighted in item number 7 on our consent agenda, talking about how because Caltrans experienced a shortage in manpower, that you had to farm out some of this project management work. And that was done at a higher rate, in fact, 46% higher than the regular rate. I'm wondering, are any of our cost overruns listed here on this item due to that situation mentioned in item number 7 on our consent agenda?
I can answer that one. No. Item number 7 is about segment 1 of the corridor, and it's about our staffing support. This item before you is about construction capital, and so it's the construction contractor, which is contracted out.
Okay.
Does that clarify?
Yeah, no, that helps me to understand that. I'm glad to hear that. And then finally, this is probably for our staff, but what was our original contingency on this project?
I believe it was 5%. That's pretty standard for Caltrans projects. However, we RTC in our construction program, we typically use at least 10%. So we are likely to use a higher contingency percentage for our future phase of highway and coastal rail trail projects.
Okay. And then finally, how is this proposed plan that we have here in this item? What will that do, or how will that affect future projects? And that's probably for our staff.
Well, the highway program is, of Measure D. I think that's what you're getting at. Is essentially, it's not endless, right? It's a 30-year measure, and we are actually the phase 1 and the phase 2 projects. So basically, the SoCal Drive to State Park Drive improvements that are either complete or under construction today. That's actually the entire expenditure plan of Measure D for the highway corridor category. So it's important for us to note, we are, not even 10 years into our 30-year measure, and we've already delivered our expenditure plan for Measure D for this. So we're doing more essentially with the third phase project all the way to Freedom Boulevard. But that third phase project, it leaves less potential, contingency for unforeseen things for that last project. So our team is really using a lot of these lessons learned in construction of these first 2 projects and applying them to the third project because it is the largest. And it being a large project, contingency levels, a percentage is more than a few $1 million for that project. So it's, it essentially adds a little bit of risk to the entire capacity of the measure to successfully complete the third phase project. So staff's been working really diligently to manage the risk of that project so that we could successfully complete it and hopefully have a little bit of funding left over to do other enhancements into the next few decades of the measure, the life of the measure.
So if I understand that, it's just for our later projects down the line, we run the risk of running out of money for them and going to have to seek some other funding sources if we want to complete them at scale. That's correct. Okay. Thank you all so much. I appreciate the presentation. Sorry if my question seemed a little bit abrupt, but this is an area that concerns me, and it's one I think the public's got a right to know. Where are we spending the money, and why is it? There's a reason that they make jokes about government can never deliver a project on budget. It's because we run into situations like this. And I want to make sure that we're transparent and we're giving complete explanations for why these things happen and that it's reasonable. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Jensen?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Clark, for those questions. I had many of the same ones that you had. Just a couple more. And then if I could just follow up, just regarding the tree removal part, it was like noted at like 679,000 or something like that for tree removal. Can you elaborate a little bit on exactly what that was? Just around retaining walls and trees that weren't noted on the plans and stuff?
That's correct. They were underestimated. So the footprint of, the wall itself was identified with a certain dimension on either side, which accounted for the number of trees that we have in the contract. What we, during construction, identified is there's access to be made as well. Looking at the contractor's operations, we had to work with them to find, obviously, as little as possible, but there was additional trees that needed to be taken out to get access to that original area that was identified. So the trees came with that.
All right. One other question. Can you explain or maybe talk a little bit more in detail about what ramp inefficiency are? And I think the number was $500,000.
Do you have a reference there?
Did not reference. I think it was listed. I apologize. I should have noted that. It just had a comment saying that there's inefficiencies at the Bay-Porter Street off-ramp inefficiencies, and I think my amount was noted at $500,000.
Okay. Yes, I can address that. So those are impacts that the contractor now has for resequencing the work. Where initially, again, they were going to close all four, do it all in one shot. Now, by piecemealing it, doing them one at a time or a few at a time, there's impacts related to that for, say, mobilization, demobilization multiple times to get in there.
All right. Wasn't written down question, but I thought there was a line item earlier that amount was 1.9. So is that 1.9? And then plus the $500,000 of inefficiency, so those two would be together at 2.4.
I'll let Martin answer.
Yes, one of the things we do when we try to project, in as much as we have the risk, but these are the risks from experience that we know that this is unanticipated. Contractor, when they bid a job, they have a way they proceed to bid that job. Now you impact that job, of course, down the road is going to come up with inefficiency, it's going to come up with loss of production, some escalation. So we always anticipate this risk as part of future costs. So that is what we're capturing right now.
All right, one last question, then a comment, and then thank you for the time. So at this point, what's the projection of change to our cost percentage overruns going to be? What are you guys projecting right now? Outside contingency, what are we running on a percentage base?
Take away from me. I don't have my glasses. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses. So
yeah, so what we would do here is the 7.7 million. That's our current projected additional work divided by the original 80.
It's about 10%.
Yeah, so not quite 10, almost 10% at the moment, which is why we chose 10% to move forward for a reasonable contingency.
Right. Thank you. And I really appreciate it. I have an extensive background in school bond projects and stuff like that. So I understand the struggles of unforeseen conditions. Just some of these, I think, we talked about transparency and being able to be responsible to the public, to be able to ask these tough questions and then have responses. So I appreciate the position you're in for answering these questions and everything. And then also it's refreshing to hear from our executive director, about learning from these and, being better in the future. And so, those can be included in costs. And so we understand what those costs are going in so we can make those tough budget decisions if a project moves forward and not have a whole bunch of potential overruns. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
Thank you, and thank you to the other commissioners. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there somebody that wants to?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something, actually, because we, the RTC staff, along with consultants, we work hand in hand with Caltrans through verifying all of these CCOs. We don't come to you unless we have verified them. And to your point, Commissioner Jensen, the 1.9 is in the smaller schedule, which is kind of like summing some of the detailed schedule together to give you an idea. So the 500,000 you mentioned, which has a TBD to it, is part of the 1.9 million. And so that's in the details. The 500,000 is in the details. You could see this 1.9 million is change order 11 and change order 11 S1, as well as the TBD item, which is the 500,000 because of the cost of the delay impacts that and the inefficiencies that could come up.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
No. Commissioner DeSerpa.
Thank you. Thanks to the other commissioners for the great round of questions. I answered many of my own questions, but I just have a couple of little things. So in terms of the Mar Vista Bridge relocation of the POC, I'm not sure what POC stands for. I know it's the base, sounds like the base of the bridge.
That's our acronym for pedestrian overcrossing.
Oh, okay, great. So is it in the same general area that it was planned for? Because we have other subsequent planning happening simultaneously.
Yes, it wasn't much of a move at all.
Right.
It's literally trying to get out of, the conflict that was identified was right at the edge of the proposed foundation for the structure. So at that point, the structure just moved a little bit to avoid that conflict.
And how did you learn that there was a force main there?
It was like,
Was it collaboration with county staff, or
Well-
I'm really glad it was discovered ahead of digging.
yes, actually, we work closely with the contractor. So as they prepare to do the work, they go out and assess utilities, they stake it, they make sure their planned work is going to work, if you know what I mean. So at that point, that's when the conflict was identified. So it was before the work began, and there was time before the work was going to begin, but because it was such a significant change, right? We looked at two different alternatives, had to evaluate that, get the design started, and at that point, it became a delay.
Okay, well, I appreciate that it happened ahead of time, that you found that out, because we had just replaced many of the sewer lines in the Seacliff neighborhood. So to have to redo that would not have been successful for the residents who have been in position. Secondly, the removal of the trees for this project and then subsequently south, it's tremendously expensive. It was actually a surprise how expensive that is. A lot of people are complaining about that because of the loss of the sort of the canopy along Highway 1. And we've got some big redwoods also in the next portion that is planned. I'm just wondering, is there any mitigation for the loss of this canopy and bird habitat, et cetera?
Do you want me to answer that since,
sure.
yeah.
We all-
And I'm sorry, I don't know.
It's okay. Again, a lot of work went into the pre-construction work, which I was heavily involved with. The mitigation, so typically when we remove vegetation, we are required, especially if it's in the coastal zone, to replant in a certain ratio, usually 3-to-1, sometimes 1-to-1 ratios. So we followed all the regulatory ratios and were able to replant on site. So although it might look like a lot of the vegetation's gone, there will be replanting towards the end of the project to restore in the correct ratio that we were required to. So typically, we replant many, many more trees than we remove.
Thank you, Sarah. That's very, very helpful. And then because I am a new commissioner, and this is not my area of expertise, these cost overruns, so we've essentially, I saw the list of money. I see that we've used the contingency, the 5% in that calculation. And I see the savings. So it seems like the cost overruns are 6.5. Is that correct? Because I heard you just say 7.5 million, but I think it's 6.5 after the cost overruns. So far.
Gross. So the 7.7 is total cost overruns. When you take the 1.5 million savings out of that, I think that's
Right.
what you're looking at as a net.
And given that this is a state highway, it's surprising to me that somehow that particular cost is now being borne by the county RTC. It seems like it should either belong to the state or be split somehow. So are you standing here telling us that this entire cost overrun has to be borne by this commission, the Santa Cruz County RTC, or?
Yes, Commissioner, we, before we start the delivery of any project, in fact, from the early times, whenever we touch on the state highway project, from early on planning as well as environmental documents and right-of-way and design and so forth, we have cooperative agreements that we do with Caltrans. And in these cooperative agreements, we spell out the responsibilities of the cost sharing, and the cost sharing has some state funding sometimes, some federal funding, as well as the local funding. And for the cooperative agreements, because of the limited nature of the state funding, except for grants and except for special shop eligible items and things like that, they would have to be borne by the partnering agency, which is us in that way. So these are kind of all elaborated in the cooperative agreements, and we are, yes, to cover the cost overruns.
Okay. So thank you for that explanation. Partly, I think I knew that already, but just for the public, I really wanted that question answered. You know, our county is fifth from the bottom in terms of our property tax revenue. And so we don't have a lot of money in our general fund. And so the help that the state gives us in the form of grants, et cetera, is really very critical to us being able to get any real work done. I wish we had more money to spend on our surface streets, because in our rural areas, on many of our unincorporated areas, people have been suffering with road conditions for many, many years, and we just aren't able to provide them the relief that they deserve. We have a lot of property taxpayers in this community, and we have school buses going down many of these rural roads. And we, you know, frankly, we need more money to help. So anyway, thank you for the report. I'm sorry we have cost overruns, and hopefully we can sort of plan maybe a 10% contingency for future projects instead. Thank you.
Commissioner Downing.
With regards to the landing of the Mar Vista Bridge, you said won't change much. Can you describe how much and if there are any additional safety measures for where it lands? That's a really busy intersection, and a lot of people use that to commute, the Mar Vista and McGregor Road. So I just want to know how much and if there's any changes that are going to
Yeah, the shift is 5 feet. 5 feet. The landing is shifted 5 feet inwards towards the freeway. So
is it-
it's a negligible shift as far as you probably won't feel it as a pedestrian. However, that was what's needed to avoid the conflict. And again, you know, with albeit it's a simple shift as it sounds, but it had to come with a lot of design changes and a lot of design impacts as well as construction impacts. Because now, for example, as the way that they have the designers try to do the shift is to reduce the radius of half of the bridge, which is like say from the middle of the freeway into the McGregor side. They reduced the radius of that a little bit, so that kind of shifted the landing inwards that 5 feet that we needed. However, again, you know, the inefficiencies of this is that the contractor had proposed to use the same forms for the first half into the second half. So it's kind of like just basically flipping the forms. And now as the radius have changed, this would necessitate that there is a new form, then they have to order the forms and these kind of things. But again, this is all kind of was evaluated against to actually relocate the actual force mains, and these force mains relocation was basically determined that it was much better to shift the bridge rather than play with the force mains.
Thank you. I know these things sometimes cascade. You move one piece and then it's like a pebble in a pond. So I just wanted to make sure that we keep our eye on that because it's a really critical intersection, especially now that more pedestrians and cyclists will be coming over the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I
was
ask,
that-
may I ask one more question? So the 5 feet, is that all going to just be a wider sidewalk, or how is it going to get distributed? So basically the 5 feet is going to be added to the cross section of McGregor Drive. So is it going to result in a wider sidewalk?
Why does?
No,
Oh, no.
No.
Okay. Or
The-
bike lanes?
there was, yes, there is a gain on McGregor. You're absolutely right. There is a wider section on McGregor at that area. You're right.
And that width goes into the bike lanes now, or the traveled lanes? Do we know the exact cross section? Sorry to put you guys on the spot.
No, no, it's not encroaching on the existing bike lane, no.
Okay.
Thank you. And any commissioner online have a question? 'Cause I can't see. No. With that, I'm going to go out to the public. I'd like to weigh in this item of the agenda.
Hi, Brian Peoples with Trail Now. Thank you for coming out, you guys, and it's a tough job. I actually have facility construction experience, and you know this stuff happens. Thank you, Commissioner Clark, Jensen, and DeSerpa for asking tough questions and looking at the details. But this brings up again the broader issue of this organization's management.